Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and over the last few weeks we've been closely monitoring the patch 11.1 season 2 update for the War Within expansion to see how the season progresses for this expansion and as the second season of the World Soul Saga. And it's actually started off not that great, especially with some of the dungeon changes that we were anticipating. But over the last few weeks, they've really started to turn around, from them listening to feedback and making adjustments, improving massively systems such as the Delve gearing system with additional rewards and even more currencies, Mythic Plus dungeons to make it easier for entry-level players that don't normally do dungeons to actually dive into the system and get more gear than ever before. Even raids are getting some much-needed bad luck protection for some of the best in slot items up there, and even some adjustments to open world content with more currencies, PvP, as well as even crafting refresher to allow players to really optimize their builds so they can start crafting their own gear much easier. And I wanted to cover exactly all of the different ways that Season 2 is going to make gearing a character, whether it is your main, whether it is your ults, even easier than it was in Season 1. That's essentially what I want to do for today's video, is to go over the culmination of all of the different ways how Season 2 might actually be much more fun experience that War Within has been so far. As always, if you guys want to see more regular updates for the War Within expansion, especially patch 11.1, currently available for testing on the PTR, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So I'm going to separate this video through the various sources that will be available when it comes to all the different features and endgame content progression systems that are going to be available in Season 2, starting with a simple one, which is open world content, which will still continue to offer great starter gear to obtain, even more veteran track pieces for a variety of different elites and enemies, as well as some of the weekly open world quests, which are still going to continue to offer you entry level items. Open world gear never has been the best gear in the world, and it's not like they're really going to change that too much heading into Season 2, but it's great starter items for anybody who's just trying to gear out the character for the very first time. Though this time around, it does seem like around Undermine we'll be getting even more open world currencies, specifically things such as Valor Stones. Chat weeklies are a set of activities that you can complete out in the open world that awards you bonus Valor Stones, a currency that will be necessary heading into Season 2. Many players are wondering if Blizzard could potentially either increase the amount of Valor Stones we can get from all forms of endgame and open world content, or just outright remove Valor Stones. It looks like they went with the increase option, so doing more open world activities is going to get you that necessary currency that will be crucial in not only upgrading gear but also crafting more sparks in order to create crafted gear, which is a good thing. Plus, also open world content will offer plenty of new collectibles for you to obtain if you're someone who is more interested in looking good rather than wearing stronger gear. Though most players that are solo players, open world players, are going to be diving into delves, and that's where I want to head into next. What are solo, well, primarily solo players are going to be able to get. Technically, delves can be done with other players, but a lot of you guys end up playing them solo specifically. So solo delve players are going to be getting even more rewards than ever before in Season 2. Not only are we getting item level improvements from delves themselves, but delves are going to be going through a bit of a reset, however. This change does mean that you'll first have to restart delves at tier 4 maximum. You won't be able to jump into tier 8, 9, 10, 11 immediately, so you'll need to work it out from 4 to 5, 6, 7, and then hit that sweet spot with your 8 and above, which awards you the most amount of gear, which can award you items of 593 quality, but also bountiful coffers, which can award you champion track gear of 639 item level, and even Delver's bounty with hero track 649, but also a new form of Nemesis strong boxes, which I'll talk about in a second, because there's a lot of different changes that came to delves in general. So one of the things I still wanted to do and continue forward into Season 2 is delves bountiful delve boxes from the bountiful coffers. Those are still going to stay about the same. That is still going to be the cap in terms of just trying to maximize all of your gear, and we're trying to do the minimum type of difficulty content for the most amount of gain. Tier 8 technically is the content that will provide you the same gear across tier 8, 9, 10, 11, and on. There's a new nemesis that's around now in Season 2. Instead of Zekvir, we get a brand new one, but also brand new types of enemies called nemesis enemies in these delves. Technically, you can avoid these nemesis elites and rares, but if you do defeat all of the different nemesis groups, you do get to buff up your nemesis strong box, an additional box that you'll get to loot at the end of that run. And the more nemesis enemies you defeat, the more rewards you can gain out of that box. Also, they wanted to give players a reason to do tier 9, 10, and 11 tier delves as well. And to encourage players to do higher tier delves, you'll now be able to get more ruin crests out of all of those delves. So you'll be able to upgrade all that champion track gear from the delves way quicker. For tackling tier 11 difficulty delves, you'll actually be able to start to earn gilded crests with a cap of 21 as of this most recent PTR build. They may increase it in the future, but it looks like they have been increasing that cap little by little. So out of a 90 cap that you can get every single week from all forms of endgame, you can get at least 21 from delves specifically, which is a nice boost, but it does mean you may, if you're trying to get as many gilded crests as possible, may want to look out for other sources like Mythic Plus dungeons, which should hopefully be a little bit more accessible with better delve gear. But also they wanted to make a change towards the Delver's bounty maps as well, as some players have gone the entirety of Season 1 of War Within doing delves and they've never picked up a single one of these bounty maps, which award you hero track gear, but also additional things such as more gilded crests, at least they did in Season 1, as well as a variety of other currencies, and these are definitely worth getting, though the rarity drop rates were abysmal. So what they're doing is changing it up where every time you run a delve and you don't get a bounty map, you are more likely to get it in your next delve with some bad luck protection, but now each player is going to be capped to only getting one of these per character per week, which means you should start seeing bounty delvers maps more often, which means even more hero track gear and better gearing through delves, but you can't get like 3 of these in a row or anything like that. You can only get once a week, but at least you'll get them far more consistently, which is a pretty nice bonus. Also, your friendly companion Bran has got a few upgrades, like you finally can run him as a tank spec. Previously, DPS classes would pair together well with Bran as a healer to be able to get all the delves done, and tanks would run Bran as a DPS to get a little bit more damage output out of him, as tanks were a lot better at surviving combat. But healers found themselves in a weird spot where you couldn't really run Bran as any role to get more of an optimal, better experience. So now with Bran running as a tank, he can actually draw a lot of aggro, and he's surprisingly efficient at it. Running delves as a healer became actually a lot more enjoyable because you get to play around with your healer-based role of managing cooldowns, pumping out healing, while Bran does a good portion of damage while you supplementing whatever you can. Plus with additional curios the Bran is getting, which is a complete revamp compared to the curios we had so far, all of these are a lot better. I got to test a bunch of them recently and they're a lot stronger, which should hopefully make it easier for you to tackle some of those tier 11 difficulty delves a little bit quicker and earlier in the season 2. And should hopefully make getting through delves in general a little bit more of a breeze, with Bran getting a little bit more functionality upgrades as well. But maybe you're not a fan of solo open world content and you would rather do group stuff instead in Season 2. This is why we got upgrades for raids as well as Mythic Plus dungeons. For raids, for the most part, they're still going to offer some of the best gear within Season 2 of the War Within expansion with a new raid, Liberation of Undermine, which has some of the best items out there with some of the highest item levels on them, some of the strongest effects out there with even rare items, and it's also a great source of you being able to get a bunch of tier gear from these encounters. Besides this, however, they're also going to offer a new Bellagio Renown track, very similar to what we have like with the Cartels of Undermine with its own bonuses, though it's going to be tied to the raid progression instead of a faction, and you get this once a week once they enable it during the raiding season. In that Bellagio Renown track, you'll be able to get a bunch of raid bonuses from additional healing, additional damage, catch-up bonuses, a bunch of conveniences, but also 2 pieces of gear tokens, or rather currency that you can trade for gear tokens from the raid itself. And over the 17 weeks, once they enable that new Renown track for the raid, you'll be able to buy 2 guaranteed items from that raiding tier, which offers some bad luck protection, basically allowing you to buy these items and then future upgrade them to the highest possible level. So if your character requires certain weapons or trinkets or certain items to even function and play optimally within dungeons and raid content, then you'll be able to guarantee purchase these items and upgrade them to the highest possible ranks. Having bad luck protection even on 2 items is really nice quality of life improvement, because I've gone through so many rating tiers where I'm just missing that one item to complete my full best slot set, or if my class requires a certain weapon to give myself the biggest power spike imaginable, you'll be able to get those items with this bad luck protection, which is a nice bonus for raiding content. But maybe you're a big fan of Mythic Plus dungeons instead, which is going to be a brand new season with a new set of dungeons all together. And Mythic Plus dungeons in general are going through a variety of new changes, offering a much better gear upgrades than previous season. with champion track gear showing up starting at Mythic 0 difficulty to get more players to want to do some of the entry-level dungeons so you can actually learn the mechanics, the abilities, what each boss and each trash bag does to get players more of a reason to dive into some of the lower tier content. Where most players would dive into delves to get a bunch of champion track pieces, now you can start doing Mythic Plus dungeons instead to get a bunch of champ track items while also learning what these dungeons do. From there, the rewards are also further upgraded as you start getting hero track drops at a +6 difficulty, which is going to mean that you're going to be able to get some of the higher tier gear very early on, with +7s offering gilded crest to upgrade the hero track items, allowing you to further increase your item level to push up some of those higher, more difficult keys much easier. Dungeon scaling is also getting nerfed as well, from a +10 per key level to a +7, which means that scaling in dungeons and keystones this season should be a lot easier for some of the newer players to get into, with them likely being not as intimidating to start off with, especially with some of the non-+12 key difficulty, which are kind of like outside of the Mythic Plus push progression. Like when you're learning dungeons, gearing out a character, it should be much easier for you to dive into it midway. The Challenger Spiral affix still exists, but it's actually been changed up to be a +12 difficulty affix instead of original Xal'ata's Guile, so you won't have to worry about this whole overly punishing deaths mechanic as you're trying to gear out your character through any of the keystones from +2 to +10 difficulty, which is a massive bonus. You still get things like Tyrannical, Fortified, and Xal'ata's flavor affixes throughout the season, but Xal'ata's Guile, which is the original Challenger Spiral, adjusted for Season 2, well, now you will not be seeing it until you're really doing some of the tougher keys at a +12 and above difficulties. Basically, the changes to Mythic Plus are designed in such a way to encourage more entry-level players that don't normally do dungeons to want to jump into them for Season 2. But also to encourage those players that do get into that ecosystem to push further than entry-level dungeons and do some of the more difficult content to get some of the best items and further grow that population as well. From there on, however, we have PvP content, which is its own ecosystem, and it remains largely unchanged this time around. They're still focused on trying to make it so that PvP gear is the best gear that you'll need for PvP content, and you will not need to do dungeons, delves, or raids in order to be able to have competitive items heading into Season 2 for PvP. If you're just focused on PvP, Honor, Conquest, and Bloody Tokens gear is all you're going to need, which is going to be great, but just the item levels of these pieces are going to be increasing in Season 2, and a lot of those items are going to be a lot stronger than any of the pieces you've gotten from Season 1, so you'll want to make sure to stock up on Honor ahead of 11.1. We do have a couple of new items, however, in the Conquest section. If you do end up getting any of the raid tier sets from LFR, normal, heroic, or maybe from the Great Vault, like if you want to do a bit of PvP, but also a little bit of PvE content on the side, any tier gear you get from there can also be instantly converted into PvP items, or at least you can add that PvP scaling to those items immediately. So you no longer have to go and get yourself a shoulder, a chest, and a helm, and all these things from Conquest boxes. Wait until the Catalyst is enabled, and then convert items week by week or every 2 weeks to get yourself tier set bonuses if you're trying to get those in PvP. If you want to do some casual PvE content and fill up your Great Vault with some of the entry-level items, get a couple tier pieces, you can immediately add and slap that PvP scaling on those items directly. So it's a bit of a convenience for PvPers more than anything, though the rest of the PvP gear stays roughly the same, whether it comes to earning the items or crafting them in Season 2. However, crafting gear does go through a number of its own changes, with lots of new recipes available in Season 2, which may likely shift around what items you'll be rocking heading into this brand new seasonal update. However, the whole crafting system is going to be different for you, and the changes may or may not impact you depending on how you interact with it. If you're someone who doesn't do any crafting yourself, but just most of the time just uses the crafting order system to make gear for your character, you will be happy to know that they have the Enchanted Crest vendor located right next to the crafting order vendor, or NPC rather, so you could get those enchanted crests, make those crests, and then go to crafting items fairly quickly from there. So it's a nice little convenience change, but for the most part, if you mostly get your gear by having someone else craft it for you, you're not going to see a lot of changes. Though if you're someone who's looking to make your own crafted gear, they did add an extra NPC with Consortium Knowledge Master that actually will let you reset your crafted profession specializations, as in it will allow you to refund all of those points that you invested into a profession and reallocate them differently for Season 2. You can only do this once for the season, so you have to be very, very careful with how you spend those spec points afterwards. But after you get that crafting profession specialization reset, you're now then able to reallocate those points in any way you see fit. So maybe if at the beginning of the season you invest your points into, I don't know, some specs that weren't really all that lucrative, weren't all that good, and you would rather be able to go into the next season being able to craft your own gear, you can now respend those points to be able to craft your own items for yourself instead, which is a fairly nice convenience change overall that allows you to better optimize your professions, especially if you're actually going to use them to craft your own items, and it might even save you the 5,000, 10,000, up to 20,000 gold in tips when you have someone else craft the item for you. But as always though, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this update video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community where we post regularly all the 11.1 class stuff, but also just general seasonal stuff as well, as they've been getting a lot more updates recently, with us anticipating the patch releasing sometime soonish, likely this month. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.